I'm going to show all the steps on how to wrap this doorway and make it look like this with aluminum. So it's going to be flat stock. So basically I take aluminum like this, just flat stock aluminum, and I'll custom bend it to wrap this whole entryway. Here I'm making some boxes for the bottom of the flutes, just to give it a little more dimension. So I bent this hem piece to go above the door because my ceiling metal is going to go inside there. Hands look dirty as hell. Anyways, so I had to notch it out for the door frame. All right, but now I'm flopping, so I got a fix for that. Show you what that is. See, I still got my hem here and this flat piece of metal. And I'm wanting this to be up on the roof, so let me fix that. This is separated from where I notched it to go around my door header. So I'm going to connect this back piece with this hem right here. There's a small hem inside there. So I am going to take this and connect these two together. And it will stiffen these, reconnect all this where I had to notch that out. And you see now it's a solid piece again. Now it's not separating. Now I have a hemmed piece that's notched around the door. And then I'll work this down all the way. All stiff. Got the piece in there. Is it all connected again? Notched around this header. There you go. Nice clean look. Yeah, if I have a hammer. Now here you have to be careful. I'm going to put this header on this ceiling here, and I'm going to dry fit it. I done did the math and cut my angles, but I'm going to double check everything before I put some sealant on it. And it does take a little bit to get inside that piece, that hemmed piece I put above the door. You just got to be careful you don't kink it or push your fingers really hard up on it and put dents and kinks in it. It takes a little finesse. It actually went in easier than I thought it was going to, and thankfully I was able to get the math right on this. I had to do just a little bit of tuning on it. Dry fit it. It's a big piece of aluminum, so what's nice is that this is about a 60-degree day, getting in maybe low 70s, so it's a pretty good prime time to put in a wide piece like this for the same variable of expansion. It ain't really hot, it ain't really cold. When I run this adhesive on here, it's just silicone. I'm going to run it long ways so it runs with the metal length. If I did it like this, then it's going to cause even more ripple. So I'm going to run my adhesive long ways with the metal. I don't have a whole lot on there. I don't want to put it super thick. I'm actually going to smooth it out a little bit because I don't want it to show in the metal. Just took my flat tool and just smoothed out those beads that I put on there. I put like 2 lines of silicone on there. Now I'm going to press it up on the roof. Do that after you dry fit it. Okay, we got a piece up there, no ripples. I put a nail all the way in the middle. I will end up taking these two out, this one and that one. Remember, I got my silicone running a long ways with the metal to kind of expand with it, and not this way where it's going to cause it to ripple. After I put this header piece on, I'm going to put like a header up here to come over this. And it'll be flash for one, and two, I can take these nails out and that metal is going to hold this and allow this big piece to expand and contract. And I don't have it super tight. I'm leaving that room for it to flex. So that's how that works. So we see all that ugly caulked and everything. Well, I'm going to pressure cap that. I'm going to put a thick bead of silicone there besides having this one little bead here. I'm going to put a thick bead there, and then this piece, this oversized hem, is going to go up against there, and it's going to be flat, so we don't have to see that caulk anymore. And then my big piece of metal is going to go down inside this hem. So there's my oversized bead of silicone, and then this is going to press down against it. All right, I got that back pressure caulked. Got a hem for my flat metal to slide into. And I did the same thing for the top. It's just bent and out up against my flat here. It's allowing it to still expand and contract, not a ripple in it. You caulk long ways with your metal so it can not ripple near as much, if at all. And I would do the same thing here. I'll lay some flat metal here, and I would run my silicone up and down. Slide it in between that hem and this hem, and that allows for expansion, contraction. It's not tight. About a good ½ inch in, about a ½ inch on the bottom. Got about 1¼ inch hem there. I got plenty of room for this to expand. Yes, that silicone will allow it to move a little bit. It needs to move. Now, if you run your silicone lines like this, you're going to get expansion joints in between those. But this way, it expands together. You run them long ways. So when you run that silicone long ways, it expands with the metal up and down, because it only expands very little, just a little bit. But if you run your silicone lines like this, then you're gonna have expansion joints in between each of them caulk lines, and that's where you're gonna get your ripples. Run it long ways with your metal, and it'll minimize any wrinkling when you're dealing with metal this wide. All right. I made a sample piece. See how I like it. All right. So I got 3/4 inches back on each one of these to interlock. With these pieces, I nailed up. So these pieces I nailed up is what this is interlocking to. So now I don't have any nails, and I got it plumb with the door. And so I don't like using caulk anymore, and I have to, but I will run a small bead here just to make sure it stays in place. Try to keep that bead nice and clean and small. And I'll do the same thing over here. But again, I'm minimizing the nails I have in this so all this metal can move around and not get wrinkled. So now I'm going to take all these spokes off, get rid of all that stuff there, smooth it all out, give me a nice flat surface to work with my metal. And then also, they had that like a little piece of molding right to the edge of the brick up there, so I'm going to clean all that up. That way I have a nice new edge, something that's going to look clean, get rid of the old caulking there, and we're going to put something nice and fresh there and make sure we're sealed up. I've already installed the windows above it, so I know that those windows aren't going to leak, and they had before. And really, in my opinion, this piece here is probably the hardest piece I'm putting on, because it has to line up all the way from one side to the other, and I can only work on one side at a time. So I just try to get all this fitted right on this side, and then I'll work on the other and hope that I don't make a mess up and have to redo it all. And this is going up and around, and then it flashes straight up against that flat part where the arch is. So everything's flashed and works out pretty good. See that later in the video how it's flashed. But yeah, this is probably the most aggravating piece I had to put on, believe it or not. Okay, here I'm going to mark it over every 2 inches at the beginning of that arch, since it's got such a defined bend. Every 2 inches I'm marking the bottom of that metal there on the top of that header. And then once it starts getting a little less of an arch bend in it, I'm marking about every 6 inches. And then I'm going to measure up from the top of that plate up to my arch at each of those marks, and that's how I'm going to be able to trace out my flat piece of metal for that arch. So what you see here is now measuring up to the bottom, and then I'm going right down at that 2-inch mark. So I measure about every 2 inches when it was such a sharp turn. And then once I got about a foot out, I start measuring about every 6 inches, and that got me a mark. And measured up. And then you just kind of trace it out. So I'm just getting all my measurements right now. And I'm hoping to do one side and then just flip it over, trace it, and it worked for the other side. And it happens to work on this door. All right, now I got all my measurements wrote down. I got my piece. I already got my total height and my total length. I'm working each half. All right. Now I would mark every 2 inches for a foot, and then every 6 inches, because it's a sharp turn and then it kind of goes gentle. So now I'm gonna mark these marks at 3 3/4. Do like a little X. 6 1/4. 8. Now I'll just kind of draw my line and hope that we're going to match what's up there. We'll kind of connect the dots here. And it looks like we're going pretty good here. Now I'm just going every 6 inches here and connecting my dots. And I can always take, some goof off or whatever and erase this pencil mark. It goes to nothing because I already had cut my total height, and then it goes to do. All right. So I think I got my arch pretty good, and this is that half of it. So I'm going to rotate it over. I got another piece of aluminum here ready, and then I'm just going to trace it before I go try to dry fit this one, and hope that it works on each side. And I will have already traced this, and I can go ahead and install this one. So got it traced. Alright, got that one traced. It's on the button up there. So let's go see if it works. Alright, so you see that we got this up now, half of it. I then got this one traced. I checked that side. So what I did, the first half of this is kind of slow, but after that it speeds up. So you can see I got this flashed. This goes on top, down, and then I'm gonna make this half round. And that piece of half round I cut right here, we're going to want to use that here in a little bit to get my arch for that half round. I got a cap at the top side. And we have this one too, which will probably be better because I'll have a bigger piece of metal to play with. Okay, so I got my flat pieces on, and I'm going to measure out for my arch and go make my arch pieces. Now to bend that around, you're basically making an L, and I work in 2 halves because it's easier. So I got my other half here. I cut it about every 1.5 to 2 inches at where its arch is really deep, and then when it gets a little gentle on the bend, I spread out my cuts, you know, about 4 or 5 inches apart. But that bottom there, I got those cuts about every 2 inches, so I have a nice gradual, nice bend with the arch. So basically, when you're covering the arch, you want to dictate how far apart you make those slits based on the arch. So if it's, you know, a real steep arch or a small one that curves around real sharp, you're going to cut those about every 1.5 to 2 inches. If you have a really big arch and it's gentle slope, then you don't have to cut it as many times, you know, because obviously it's not bending as sharp. Now when you go to seal this on, I kind of run my finger down the bottom here to put a nice, pretty 1/4 inch bead along the bottom. Don't want to get too sloppy, but above that, the rest of it, you put a lot of silicone. Just caulk the hell out of it, and then just press your metal on. When that flat surface there, you want to make sure you're just a little big, so you know you're going to cover all those little slits. So I overhang about 1/8 of an inch below, you know, where I bend that metal around.
So you just want to oversize it just a little bit, not too much because that can look like crap too. So, but you definitely don't want to see none of those slits. You want to make sure you're sealed and no weather getting in there. And it's always easier to work in 2 halves when covering round tops. And once I have those 2 pieces on, I had a little keystone I already made, and I'm gonna put it right above my seam in the center. So I'm gonna make sure I cut that seam in the center, and then I'm gonna cover that seam with the keystone. And you will see that keystone in just a minute. There you go.
An inch. Well, whatever it was. Close enough. Alright, so to make my flutes, I need to go back an inch, and then I'm going to start my flutes. Going back towards the door is an inch. Now I'm going to start making my flutes. We're going to make this right here. This is what we're making. I already made one, so I make it oversized so I can cut off what I need when I get towards the end here, because this shrinks that distance, and I ain't gonna make 50,000 marks on a piece of metal. Use your brake. Use your brake. Start my flute. Flip it around. And I'm gonna gauge about 1/2 inch. Alright, just gonna gauge it. I can see my line, my bend, and then the edge of my silver. And I'm gauging visually a 1/2 inch. Now, even that up. Now I have started this, and then now up, and now we're going to do our flat part. And then there's going to be a V, a flat, a V, a flat. Right. Only using a brake and not putting 50,000 marks all over this piece of metal. If I was trying to match them up, I was going to have to overlap them, then I'd be marking every one of these things. There's no sense in it when they're going to be far apart. I'm going to use my brake. If I go to this outer edge of my brake, that's 3/4 of an inch. And sometimes it's hard to see where your bend is. So you just you can put a mark on there to help see it. Gauge it, kind of look at it. Make sure it looks the same down there. Put a little bend in it. Flip it around. I'm going to gauge that 1/2 inch again. So my face is 3/4. My V's are 1/2 inch each. And a little more. Now the value of that V is a little deeper bend, because you got to bring it back. And then we're going to go about 1/2 inch again. You can see, you just gauge it with your eyes. You don't know what 1/2 inch looks like by now, then you know you probably ain't bending this. That bend, when you finish that V, this metal needs to be flat, parallel to the ground. Alright, that gets our next flat piece. You see this flat piece? And now we're making another flat piece. I'm going 3/4 of an inch. This is going to set up against my brake. So I put this up there. This is going to, I'm going to run bead of silicone, and then this is going to flare. It's going to hide all that silicone, and then seal where this is, and it's going to leave me a nice clean line with this. It's going to leave me a nice clean line against the brick. So that's how you bend that. You're going to dry fit it, then cut the length. Make sure it looks good, make sure my flare's tight against the brick. Once I'm satisfied with it, I would take my caulking. Press it on. All that silicone is smashing up behind that flange. It's sealing this a lot better than my little bead of caulk would. So now we have a fluted doorway that's sealed. That's why we run that pressure caulk there. We put a thick bead and we just press that metal and that flange up against it, and all that smashes up behind there, seals that up, and it leaves you with a nice clean line. And I have done put this piece on since our last video, and we have a little bit of caulking to do. So okay, so I got my center spoke on, and now I'm going to just kind of gauge with two of them. And I'm just going to kind of go visual with it, what I think looks good. And then I'll get measurements off those two once I have those installed to match on the other side. Once I got them all prepped and cut and ready, I would drill a hole for a nail at the very top of those spokes. So when I seal them, I will be able to hide those nails with the silicone. And then I'll put one down the bottom. And in between there, I will have little globs of silicone inside that spoke, enough to where it doesn't ooze out, but it adheres to that flat metal. So I will finish up the bottom with the half circle, and I just add a couple little V's bends to it just to give it a little more dimension. It was like 9 inches wide by 4.5 tall. So I just made like a perfect half circle, and then I just caulk it on there really well and fill it in. Alright, so now I'm going to put some panels on this flat wall. Now, I've had some extreme temperatures since I've been back, and there's not a ripple in this. Remember, I ran my silicone up and down with the length of the metal, left myself plenty of room in my hems for it to expand, contract, and I have no ripples in this metal. And this metal is 22 inches wide, I think. Yeah, it's a full 24-inch sheet, and I have no ripples in it. You can install wide metal if you take your time and think about all those aspects of why it will ripple. Now, if I ran caulking like this, a little zigzag, you're going to build pockets of resistance, and you're going to get ripples in it. If you run your caulking long ways, it's going to expand, contract with that metal. I don't have a ripple in any of this metal. My header, any of this, it's all flat. And when I installed this, it was closer to 70 degrees. It's 30-something degrees now. Not a ripple in it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add even more structural integrity, and it's going to make it look good. I'm going to put some panels on there to match with the door. So I'm going to move this on over this way, even with the panels on the door, and then I know where I need to be. All right, so and we'll install those panels on here, and it's going to give us a little more look, a little more dimension, and it's just going to look fancy. You know, go with the panels on the door and the glass. So all I need is my bottom of each panel where it's level. I'll just use my square to transfer over where those panels are. It's not an exact science. I just want to be close to where my panels are, and that's got me pretty close. That's all that matters. as long as I'm close. All right. So I'm gonna make it 14 inches wide. So I made all of these to length that I need them to be. So it's gonna give me less cuts when I get here. So I have scored my lengths. All I gotta do is break these off. There's my width of my panels. So I scored them, bent them all at the same time. And it required me less bending, less cutting. And so, like I said, all I have to do is break off where I scored it. And I have all my length already cut. That's gonna be my bottom, that's my top to match what they have on the doors. All right. So, scored it good enough, you can just break these off. I was able to speed myself up because I was having to measure all these again. I just measured them with my big square, scored it, and then bent pretty much 4 pieces in one bend. So this is this whole side now. And everything's at length. I don't have to measure them. They're already done. So what I'm going to do is my bottom piece will stay square, and I will put a nail where the miter will cover it, so top corners. My miter is going to cover that. So we'll make sure, yeah, that's. I would drill these. I drill these holes. So I can put my nail through there without smashing this little bit of metal. If I try to poke a nail through there, I'll bend it and ripple it, and this allows it to stay flat. Right? And then I will 45 my bottoms of my legs and leave my tops flat. So I will 45 this one. I will 45 this one. Learn how to read a square. All right. So 45 this one. I'm going to 45 the bottoms of my legs, leave the tops alone. But I am going to put a nail hole in my tops of my legs, not on my bottoms. I'm going to try to limit how much I see nails. So I'm going to put them where the miter or the header is going to cover this nail. Alright, so my miter is going to cover this. Just got to think about where your miter is going to be and where you need to drill it. Alright. And then I will 45 my headers on both sides. And it would just lap over those legs. Oops, dummy. Flipped it around. Mark. Alright. Make sure I'm still center. Alright. So we'll push this nail in there pretty hard. If it falls over there, it's fine. I know I got the nail where I need it. I'll level it again. want to punch that nail in there just a little tight. All right. Now we're going to level this again. Put this other nail on there. Nail that one. We'll be careful not to smash that nail in too far, but enough for the metal. There's a little dented in there, so my miter will cover over it. And then these miters will cover that nail. Okay? So, I'm going to level this one. And sometimes level isn't always right, as I want to check the measurement on this as well. And that's perfect. So, I'll hold it in place. Now this nail, I'm going to push this down where it sits tight against this one. And then this nail is going to kind of hold it down there too. Alright, see how that stays on? Now you can also, normally I add a little bit of, I guess you're seeing what I'm doing there. It's best to go ahead and add some silicone over these miters as well. See, that's really tight. I like that. To make sure this is going to stay in place. Let's see if I can get that wedge back on there. There you go. Make sure that stays in place. Alright? Now, you think I put these nails in there, it's going to cause this to ripple, but it's not. I'm not putting that many in there. It's still going to expand down a little bit, but these are stiffening this all up as well. So, I haven't had any issues with this. So this one here, once I get the one leg, this square, I'm just going to go ahead and do this to make sure I'm where I need to be. Give myself a little mark and know that I'm going to be tight. All right. Put some caulk on my miter. It really don't hurt to. It don't help. Don't hurt to put a little glob in the middle. I didn't on that other one, but it doesn't hurt to put a little glob to where it sticks out, but it ain't gonna ooze out the sides, but it's more in the center of this. I made these 1 inch wide. And then you just gotta be careful not to touch your wall until you're ready. And then that's another way to stiffen these up and make sure these stay on. And so remember, I'm putting downward force on this, so this is tight. It's going to hold on here. Not a whole lot, just a little bit downward force. And then this nail is kind of put on. I almost put that nail too tight. I think I'll get by with that. This could be tedious work. And then this top. This one over, let's see here. So this top we're going to basically just caulk this one on. I'm going to put quite a bit on my miters. I'm going to put some in the middle here that sticks out. Alright. So as you can see, sticking out a little bit, but it ain't gonna come out the sides. It's enough for me to just adhere it to my metal. So, and I got it pretty snug. That's what I want. There you go. Once that panel's done, then I'm gonna put another panel here to match their door. So I'm not gonna bore this video showing doing all 4 of these, because I got 2 over here also. All right, well, I got all the panels on. I just had to clean up some scuffs, pencil marks and stuff. I got a few little things to clean up. And then I'm going to do some caulking and get everything all nice and tight. But you can see how those panels just really made it all come together. The keystone added a little something to the arch there, a little something. Got the fluted doors.
face there. Nice little panel boxes there. Kind of hard to see the bushes covering it all up, but it's turned out really nice. All right, it's all done, all sealed, and putting that across the bottom of the concrete there. So if any kind of, or on these legs, you know, any kind of condensation or anything can weep out. Everything else is sealed. They say above that header is it's bent back and flash, and then all this stuff is over top of that flash. So it's in good shape. Put the numbers back where they wanted them. The panels go with the panels on the door. So they're at the same height. No ripples. 24 inches of metal. Not a ripple in it. Not a ripple in it. No ripples. Now you can caulk around these, but I decided not to caulk around my panels. Eventually, everywhere you caulk is going to get dirtier faster than your metal. So whatever I can limit on caulking, I will, to keep it clean. So those panels are sitting really nice against the metal, nice and flat, you know, because I don't have any ripples. So you can put wide metal on and it not ripple. Yeah, this turned out perfect. That's perfect. And here's some more samples of some custom metal work I've done using panels and all the little tricks I described in this video. So it's all custom aluminum work, nothing store-bought, just flat coil stock, all custom made to do what you see here. All that's handcrafted.